Om Namo Bhagavate Ramakrishna. Om. Salutations to Bhagavan Ramakrishna. Welcome to the household disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, the life of Yoginma. Let us close our eyes for a few moments in silent contemplation of that immortal self that is within. Today is also Good Friday. It's an auspicious day. Think of their soul as immortal. Visualize it like a bright golden light. Deep within your heart. Om. Peace, peace, peace. The life of Yoginma, Yogindra Mohini Biswas. As we have seen in the first section of her life, she began associating with Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. And that created a spiritual hunger. It is like a real hunger. Like if you're hungry, if you have been eaten for a couple of days, you know what's hunger. Even if you haven't eaten for a few hours, you know what's hunger. But this hunger gnaws you. And it's a good thing because it shows the soul's, you can say, urge to meet its infinite nature, to unravel its infinite nature. Even though the soul is growing, there come periods when there's a kind of a dry spell. Many mystics call it the dark night of the soul. It's not really a dark night of the soul. It's as if the soul feels as if it's been abandoned. And it's like the closest thing that you can, as an illustration you can get is, like somebody is pushing you down in the water, not letting you surface. And you're panting and you're struggling, you're gasping for breath. That's exactly what happens during this period. So she also went through this, though she was constantly engaged in worship, in study, in japa and meditation. Everyone has to go through it. There's no exception. There are times when you go through it for a few months. There are some who will go for extended periods, sometimes lasting years. But the idea is to stick on, to hold on fast. So during one of these episodes, and sometimes we have, yes, a couple of them. It's not just one time you go through it. So she went to Dakshineshwar, and early in the morning, in fact, she walked all the way from Calcutta to Dakshineshwar. And when she reached there, she met Sri Ramakrishna, and then she goes and plucks some flowers. Sri Ramakrishna was standing out there on the porch, northern porch, and he said, "What have you got there?" So she shows that I've got these flowers. And it strikes her, well, she offers those flowers at his feet, and he gets into an ecstatic mood. And as she's bowing down before him, he places his foot on her head. That's a kind of a special blessing. So it took away all that kind of dry spell in that spiritual life of hers. She also says that whenever I had a question, always it as if the master knew it beforehand, and he either replied to it, answered it directly or indirectly to someone else. And over these years, she was practicing. One day, she was always staying at home, and she decides one day to go to Dakshineshwar to meet the master, and took along her mother and her daughter. And all the three of them went to Dakshineshwar, and Sri Ramakrishna was very gracious. He treated them well. Moreover, her husband, whom they had separated, not legally, but then they were separated because he had squandered all his wealth and he was a bohemian, as they say. So one day she insisted that her husband meet Sri Ramakrishna. So he was brought to Balram Bose's house where Sri Ramakrishna was there. And Sri Ramakrishna, looking at him, says, "He is an unfortunate wretch. A householder has his duties to discharge, his debts to pay, his debts to the gods, his debts to the ancestors, his debts to the rishis, and his debt to his wife and children." Now, he knew that because of him, Yoginma had suffered great anguish over the years. And that's the reason why I say. Now, we think that we come in this world, we are born and we are come to enjoy, and we jump about, dance and all. We have no responsibilities, and we have no encumbrances, we have no ties, we have nothing. And we live, and then we die, and then we go. But according to this, there is a doctrine in Vedanta, in Hinduism, where when you're born with these 5 debts to the gods, to the ancestors, to the sages, to your family, to society, and to all the lower beings also. I mean, it's not lower, to other beings. You have a moral responsibility towards your environment, to your society, to the sages, to the gods, and to your ancestors. And this must be repaid. If you don't, then the result is, as we know, that you don't get connected with any of this. There are these 3 things which are unseen. That's to the rishis, the sages, that's the gods, and that's the ancestors. And the 2 are the seen ones. So every person born is indebted to these 5 factors. These are called the 5 factors. And when you repay them, they are called the 5 great sacrifices. You repay your debts to the gods by worship. You repay the debts to the sages, rishis, by studying the scriptures. You repay your debt to your ancestors by acknowledging, yes, you have the genetic material that has enabled you to survive because they have survived and because they underwent all that trouble. And you carry in you all your ancestry. Then you have your duty towards your family and your society. You have to have, because there's always something called a give and take. You have grown in that society. And then you have your duty towards the environment. You simply cannot go and keep on being destructive. So this is what Sri Ramakrishna has said. And in today's world, we see, like we feel we are indebted to no one. We are answerable to no one. We can do what we want. That is making us more and more kind of isolated from being connected to the whole universe, the seen and the unseen. However, Yoginma did not give up, just because Sri Ramakrishna had mentioned this thing. He's a miserable wretch. She persisted, and she also insisted that he meet Sri Ramakrishna. And once time he did meet him at Dakshineshwar. That's a time when he was really impressed. And after all these years, he was repentant and contrite of what he had done to his family. He had destroyed his family. He had squandered all his wealth. So he met Sri Ramakrishna Dakshineshwar. Unfortunately, after a few days, he was bitten by a dog. And you know, dogs in India carry all the rabies. I mean, not only in India. So he died bedridden. But before he could, Sri Ramakrishna said, you take care of him in his last days. So she had him transported to her house in Calcutta. They were living outside Calcutta. And she served him, and he passed away there. So Yoginma's house also was visited by Sri Ramakrishna, because seeing her devotion, he was impressed with that devotion, and he visited them. And for her, that house had become as holy as the city of Varanasi. And that's a time where she was spending, you can say, her life in spiritual practices. So one time they had gone to Balram Bose's house, and Sri Ramakrishna was there during a chariot festival called Jagannath. They take a chariot and they place the images of the gods and they pull it around. That's like what they do it in that holy city of Puri. So it's you can say, a reenactment of that festival in every house. So Sri Ramakrishna was there, and he was leaving for Dakshineshwar, and then the people were bidding him goodbye. And Yoginma kept on following him and following him. She felt an irresistible attraction. So Sri Ramakrishna says, Anandamayi, blissful mother, he called her mother. She bowed down and saying, why don't you come with me? Now, this is another thing that is felt by the devotee, an irresistible attraction for God. As the results of spiritual practices come in, you can't articulate it, what is drawing you, but you are being drawn to God. And this is also experienced by everyone. You are now drawn to God. If you feel you are being drawn to God, you feel that tug. That's the height of blessedness that you can ever experience. So she went along with him, and then she had reached such heights only due to her spiritual practices over these years. She also says, I want to call on God more and put my mind wholly on God, but it is hard to control the mind. What should I do? Imagine her asking this question, and what about us, can see. So Sri Ramakrishna says in a sweet voice, why don't you surrender to him? Be like a cast-off leaf in a gale. Do you know what it is like? A cast-off leaf lies on the ground and flies away as the wind carries it. Similarly, one should depend on God. Let the mind move as the power of divine consciousness moves it. That's all. Now, this solution, yes, I mean, it's very difficult to let go, to surrender. People think, oh, I don't have anything to do, just surrender. This surrender is complemented by spiritual practices. The very fact of spiritual practices is a type of self-surrender. People think, I have nothing to do, I've got just to let go. The sense of the self, the sense of the ego is so strong, it won't let you. You think you surrendered, but the ego will come and say, hey, what's that? Why should you surrender yourself to somebody else whom you don't even know? So, surrender is always accompanied with spiritual practices. So, we might think like, oh, he is asking her to surrender. And that means he's asking her, it implies that he's asking her to keep on doing her spiritual practices. It's only when you keep on doing your spiritual practices, then when you can understand the power that is drawing you and you surrender to it because you feel that this power is much greater than anything that you've ever experienced, not only in your own consciousness, but can ever experience. You will feel that this power is moving the universe. It's not just moving you. And then you surrender it, knowing that this power is beneficent. So that's why I say, move as the power of divine consciousness moves it. This is that great feeling that when you're confined like a bird in a cage, when it's set free, the first thing it does is first glances about and just flies out. And as it flies, it goes at top speed. And it flies around and looks back at, maybe at that cage. It senses the freedom. Because with surrender comes this idea of the experience of freedom. So this is how you experience spiritual practices, surrender, and freedom altogether. So they reached Dakshineshwar and they reached out there, and see what happens is they find that all the devotees were there and there were no groceries for the devotees and etc. So Sri Ramakrishna said, why don't you go and buy some groceries? And they do, she and another woman. Now in those days, for women in India, they used to have the kind of a veil. They used to wear a veil. That is, their sari itself acted like a veil. To go out unaccompanied was kind of, especially for aristocratic women, it was unthinkable. They always used to either go in a palanquin or accompanied by somebody in a horse carriage or somebody. So he sent them, go out. So they go out, buy groceries, come and cook it. And then he says, one cannot be perfect as long as one is subject to shame, hatred and fear. In his own words, lajja, grina, bhoy. So these are the old fetters. These are 3 of the other 8 fetters. I mean, there are other fetters, but these are the prominent ones. Yes, fear and shame and hatred, they bind the soul. If you can free yourself from this, and this is how he tried to break those bonds in them. So here, Sri Ramakrishna used to interact with both men and women. And one time Yoginma is saying, no, I wonder why people have been thinking about Sri Ramakrishna as speaking against women. It's never true. In his company, we were women, we felt he was a woman. And men used to say that he was a man. Children used to interact with him and felt he was like one of us, like a child. When great monks used to come and they used to see that he was one of the greatest type of monks, the Paramahamsas. When worshippers of the Divine Mother used to come, they used to see, oh, he's a worshipper of the Divine Mother. And worshippers of Vishnu used to come, they said, oh, he's a worshipper of Vishnu. He had that tremendous capacity to be in the moment and to interact with you on your own level. People used to see him as like what they were and what they worshipped. So, in fact, one time, Girish Ghosh asked him, Sir, are you a man or a woman? And Sri Ramakrishna smiled and says, truly, I don't know. What's this? You see, he was so absorbed in his own real self that the ideas of the body, etc., were far away from his mind. So he was like, he could be anything according to the circumstances and according to the people surrounding him. So for us, we have a limited idea of our own personality and we interact with that because our sense of self is this much and it can't expand to bring in other people. So his sense of the self was vast. It could accommodate everybody and anybody. So one time, Yoginma, she asked, what's going to happen to us? I mean, she has been struggling, she's been the recipient of grace. And it's ordinarily, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to us? Sri Ramakrishna says, what more do you want? Then he says, you have seen me, fed me, served me. What else do you need? Don't worry. The 1,000-petal lotus on your 7th plane will bloom at the time of your death. Now this is the 7th. That's the 1,000-petal lotus there. It's a spiritual lotus. It's nothing to connected with your brain. So here Sri Ramakrishna is also giving us a clue. What more do you want? Devotees who come to Sri Ramakrishna, they have come and in their own way, through their own life, they serve him. And saying, what more do you want? You have seen me, you have served me, you have fed me, you are praying to me. What more do you want? And then he says something that's comforting for all of us. He said, at the devotee's last moment, I shall have to appear before them. Otherwise, how will they get liberation? Here it is. This is what is the assurance given by Sri Ramakrishna for all his devotees. I mean, you've got to be his real devotees. You've got to think about him, meditate on him, serve him, and make Sri Ramakrishna your ideal. Then he says, at the last, and I have seen and heard hundreds and hundreds of cases where at the last moment, the devotee sees Sri Ramakrishna, oh Holy Mother, and gives up the body. And can't you see, they tell the people surrounding them, can't you see he's come? Bring a seat to him, sit down. What are you looking at? And those people thinking that the guy is delirious. Actually, hundreds of cases. So here it is, at the last moment I shall have to appear before them. Otherwise, how will they get liberation? Because that's a doctrine. Your last thoughts will dictate where you're going to go. Your last thoughts in this life. And we have got so many thoughts all through our lives. In that last moment, it's all confusion. Because we have not been very steady in our spiritual practices or thoughts about God. So there is a great chance for other thoughts to pop out. So Sri Ramakrishna, God assures us that when you see somebody at the time of death, all your thoughts are being churned, they all come, they surface. And the predominant thought will take you. Now if you see somebody, Sri Ramakrishna, oh, that's where you're going to go. This has been enumerated in the Bhagavad Gita. The last thought will tell you where you're going to go. So this is how God helps us. He comes and then you see God and then you give up your body. And that is what they will get liberation. And He has come to give liberation. So Yoginma, after all these assurances, and she has said, at the time of death, here the 1,000-petal lotus will bloom by itself. That will be awakened. That is the supreme place. That is, at that point, it's difficult for the spiritual energies to descend. Once the 1,000-petal lotus blooms, is awakened, there is no coming back down. It's just merging in the absolute. So she was of strong determination, and whatever she undertook it to perfection. At one time she says, the ambience in Calcutta, though Sri Ramakrishna was there, and Sri Ramakrishna was during those terminal illness days in Kashipur. So she decided to go to Vrindavan. Vrindavan is another sacred place in North India. So she went to Sri Ramakrishna for ask for permission. So he said, yes, but you go and ask Holy Mother. And Holy Mother was present. Oh, you've said everything, whatever has to be said. But he insisted, you go and ask Holy Mother. And he says, obtaining her consent, you will get everything. That's another assurance that we get. That the final keys to the knowledge of Brahman is held by Holy Mother. Yeah. So it's like Sri Ramakrishna has given his entire power of attorney to Holy Mother. Like Girish Ghosh had given the power of attorney to Sri Ramakrishna. Okay, I can't do anything, but I'll delegate everything to you. You do everything for me. And Sri Ramakrishna himself in his turn delegated all his spiritual treasures and all his responsibilities as an avatar to Holy Mother. So the next day she went and she took leave of them formally, and she goes to Vrindavan. She was living in one of the properties of Balram Bose's Kalababus Kunja. That has now recently become part of the Orders Center at Vrindavan. There she heard Sri Ramakrishna had passed away. And after a few months, Balram Bose had requested, not insisted, Holy Mother to also go to Vrindavan, because her grief was too much to bear. To assuage her grief, you sent her to Vrindavan with Swami Yogananda, Swami Adbhutananda, and some devotees were there. M's wife was there also. So the whole party reached Vrindavan, and Holy Mother saw Yoginma there, and both of them clung to each other and wept, and both of them are weeping and weeping for days. They just couldn't do anything. And one day Sri Ramakrishna appeared and said, "Why are you crying so much? Here I am. Where have I gone? It's just a change from one room to another. Isn't that so?" These words reassured us and lessened the intensity of our grief to a considerable extent. Yeah, this is what it is. So people say, "Oh, Sri Ramakrishna, where's Sri Ramakrishna?" If you're really intense in your yearning, will appear. So it's like, somewhere in that room, you just come the side. And this has also been proved over and over again by devotees. So Holy Mother was in an intense spiritual, you can say, mode, absorbed in meditation and japa, and she sit down for long hours, absorbed in meditation, in high levels of meditation. And so was Yoginma. So one time in our temple, Lala Babu's temple in Vrindavan, she used to go often there, and she was so absorbed in meditation, she goes into samadhi. So I'll read that. Long after the evening vespers was over, she remained there motionless like a statue. The temple attendants tried to bring her back to normal consciousness since it was time to close the temple gate. One cannot bring somebody out casually from the deepest absorption called samadhi. There are techniques, of course. But their efforts were in vain. They just couldn't bring her. That was, her absorption was complete, total. Holy Mother sent Swami Yogananda to find out where's Yoginma. And then he goes there with a lantern. It was late, and then he finds her in samadhi. He began to repeat the master's name in her ears, and after some time she came down from an exalted state. Yoginma was later described that I was in such a high spiritual mood that I even forgot whether the world existed or not. Obviously, in that state, everything is wiped out because your ordinary mind is wiped out. Your mind tells you the world exists outside because you perceive it. In that state, the ordinary mind has become merged in its own causes. It does not tell you whether there's a world outside, you perceive it outside. So that's what. And that is done through extreme concentration. So Holy Mother, in fact, remarks, Holy Mother says that Yoginma would become so absorbed in meditation that she did not notice when flies sat on her eyes and caused sores in them. She had lost all body consciousness. And this is the hallmark of meditation. You lose all sense of your body. That you are a body, you forget it. Otherwise, you can't get into deep meditation. You cannot put your feet in two boats trying to go in opposite direction. You'll fall in the water. So this was, flies. Fortunately or unfortunately, those flies are still there around. Not those, maybe the descendants in Vrindavan. I remember when I first went there, I got so annoyed with the flies. Oh my God. Why can't I do something about this? The flies all over the place. And now you have also monkeys all over the place. Macaques. Troublesome. But to be there, imagine Holy Mother sitting there, absorbed in meditation. The flies will sit down all over you. It will disturb your meditation. And the monkeys will come and disturb your meditation. But if you are really hell-bent on meditation, then nothing can stop you, monkeys or flies or whatever. So the flies will come and sit down, try to get some moisture, because in very deep meditation, what happens is there's a flow of tears, of joy. And maybe the flies like that kind of tears of joy flowing out of your eyes. And they sit down and then, well, you get sores also. Imagine them be sticking around there for a long time. So, yeah, I think we can stop here to take a few questions. We will need one more class, next Friday, to complete her life, her amazing life. Remember, this is just to kind of instill into you some form of, you can say, devotion to these great, you can say, souls, and also to learn from them. Besides, you could go through their life in extension once you get a taste for it. So because they are very inspiring, who wouldn't be inspired after learning about this? She was just like one of us, and yet by her, you can say, stern spiritual practices, she wasn't very tall. She was thick-set, sturdy, of course, and she had the most beautiful eyes and the sweetest of smiles. And she wasn't, angular in her look. She was kind of rounded, and that spoke about her as devotional in temperament. And to look at her and to interact with her was to just fall in love with her. She was respected not only by the monastic disciples, but also the lay disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. Om, peace, peace, peace. So we don't have any questions yet. Do you have any questions here? Yeah, this is something that we see in the lives of once the soul is awakened due to divine grace, your own karma, your own yearning, nothing is going to stop you. Even we saw the dry spells that go through, the dark night of the soul. It's spoken by like St. John of the Cross and even Teresa of Avila and all these great mystics. They speak about it. And during that time, they feel as if the grace has been withdrawn from them and it leaves them like exposed, vulnerable, defenseless, and they don't know what to do. All their spiritual practices also are not giving them any kind of, you can say, support. It's like you're doing spiritual practices, but there's no kind of punch in them, no sting in them. That's a time when it's saying, it's one of the indicators that the soul is taking a higher step. People think, oh, you're stuck. And no, it's taking a higher step. So the spiritual yearning comes in this form. So if you persist, you will break through. And then you feel you're flooded with grace. This is another thing. And as I mentioned, that sometimes there are a couple of episodes, not just one episode of dryness. And this is the time when you need the company of other devotees also. You talk, you listen to their experiences, and then you get hope. Yeah, okay, fine, I'm on the right track. The question, how do we understand Holy Mother's grief after Ramakrishna passed? Wouldn't she have understood that she was still with her? Yes. That whether he was still with her. Yes, of course. But it's even when Sri Ramakrishna passed away in Dakshineshwar, she gave out a loud cry and says, "Oh Kali, why have you left me behind? She used to see Sri Ramakrishna as Kali. Okay. And then she was silent all through. They never heard a whimper because the depth of her grief was so great, possibly. But she knew. So it is a kind of a separation from God. It's not separation from a kind of a Sri Ramakrishna as a husband, you see. There are times when God, when comes in an avatar, descends. They behave exactly like us. We feel that we are grieving so much. Yeah, why this is lost and that is lost, and we grieve over even small things. Mother has shown us that, yeah, if you really grieve that because you have been separate from God, God will come to you. We grieve for things of the world. It's better to grieve for God. So she was always aware of His presence. But yet, that human element is so great. And the human element is not just in a small degree. The human element is in its perfection. In sorrow, it's 100%. In grief, it's 100%. In joy, it's 100%. They, as it were, they go to the very extreme of things. So even a small sentiment is magnified in their lives. So that is why we find Holy Mother and Yoginma both weeping and as if grieving. It's very difficult. The mind has become so sensitive. The body has become so sensitive. Not a thought runs through their mind without leaving an impact, because their minds are so pure, so holy. So that is how you can see. And that he was always, wouldn't she have understood? She always understood, yeah. But like I said, in that state, she is both the divine and the human. She exhibits the human qualities, but to its full potential. How do we develop that type of yearning? Oh, slowly. Like you think about an object over and over and over again, especially divine objects, you will start building up that momentum, that yearning will take place. So what it needs is constant thoughts over and over again. When you think about a person over and over again, you form an attachment to it, obviously. So it's either on the physical or the emotional or the spiritual level. So when you think of a deity over and over again, you may not know, but that very deity is responding. You think, oh, I think God does not have ears, We pray, and nothing is. We don't get any response. Actually, that's not a fact. After some time, you'll feel that yearning within you. That is the response that you have been receiving from that particular deity. It comes in the form of yearning. So blessed is that person. Sri Ramakrishna says, if you have yearning for God, you will see Him. It's like seeing the light during dawn. The first light that appears, it tells you that the sun is going to rise soon. So this yearning is the first sign that you are going to get the vision of God. Does the main obstacle to surrender is our mind? Yes, the mind which has its ego. So the last obstacle is the sense of the separate self. The more you think of God as, I am God's child, then what happens? That last obstacle becomes no obstacle. The other obstacles of your subconscious thoughts, etc., your other impressions in the mind, those will be just pushed away without any difficulty. But your sense of the self, the ego, is the last obstacle. So link it with that of God. So it does not become an obstacle. Is it just on, audio, okay. Audio been, cutting out time to time. I hope everybody else is okay. So it's been smooth. Some say it's been nice. So this is how spiritual life blossoms. And when it blossoms, there's yearning, there's that, hankering to have that vision. It's like, it's nearby. It's as if it's there. I remember my guru saying, when we were young, we used to meditate the whole night and we sleep the whole night. Or almost most of us. And he used to say, when we used to sit down to meditate, we used to say, here I'm going to get into samadhi. Here I'm near it. With that kind of, you can say, intensity, they used to sit down and meditate. I'm going to crack this code. I'm going to break it. There are monks, especially the one whom I heard from. So they used to sit down to meditate at night. In night, in the sense, in the monastery, 9:30, 10 is night. And when they used to open their eyes after meditation, it used to be dawn. So that was the intensity of that yearning. You might, if you are blessed enough, you will come to that stage. But Sri Ramakrishna says, do a little for me. Like he tells Yoginma, you have seen me, we haven't seen you, we've seen his picture. Holy Mother says he dwells in his picture. So you've seen him, serve him. How do you serve him? Well, love him. And whenever you do something, say that this is all meant for you. At the end of the day, say, whatever I've done, thought, even you can say, spoken about, is all for you. So slowly, you are doing what he has advised. And as he has assured us, he will come to us, to his devotees, at the last moment. Okay, we stop here. We have announcements to make. Tomorrow we have a retreat at Tapovan, that's at Snohomish County, Arlington, from 1 to 5. Come a little early. We can go around the place and enjoy its beauty and serenity. And on Sunday morning, 10 a.m., we have Vedanta mysticism. Welcome. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Peace, peace, peace.